Good evening and welcome to a very rare Tuesday meeting of the Development Review Board. We're here for an appeal by Bradley Holt and Jason Pelletier of a decision of the zoning administrator regarding the Hillview property. The applicants are seeking reversal of an extension granted by the zoning administrator and have appealed it. And the first stage of the appeal is to the Development Review Board. So without further ado, let me swear, are you both going to testify? Okay, let me swear you in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Don't see Roger.
Okay.
There he is.
Let's see. Why don't you first go first and explain the basis of your permit? Keep in mind that everything that you've filed, we've read.
Okay.
So you don't need to be repetitious.
Of course. So, yeah, so that was the first thing I just wanted to confirm that you did get the 12.
Got everything.
Evidence and the 13 bill documents. Great.
Yep.
So first of all, I just want to incorporate those documents into our testimony, and this that evidence is really intended to support the arguments we're going to present to you this evening. So our appeal here is straightforward. On or about October 18th, Tyler issued a one-time 12-month extension of zoning permit 2021-83. This permit was for work on upgrading a driveway and access road. The permit was set to expire on November 2nd, prior to the issuance of this extension. In issuing this extension, Tyler failed to follow Richmond zoning regulations, section 5.3.2b, which states, quote, "A zoning permit shall not expire if the administrative officer determines that, viewed as a whole, the work, time, and expenditures invested in the project for which the zoning permit was issued demonstrate a good faith intent to presently commence upon the permitted use," end quote. There was and is no evidence of any work, time, or expenditures invested in the project. The regulations state that a good faith intent is demonstrated through the work, time, and expenditures invested in the project. And since there was no evidence of any work, time, or expenditures, then the applicant failed to demonstrate faith intent to presently commence upon the permitted use. Even if this board chooses to determine that a good faith intent can be demonstrated through some other means, a position clearly not supported by the regulations, then still there was and is no evidence of a good faith intent to presently commence upon the permitted use. Richmond zoning regulations section 5.3.2b goes on to state, quote, "The administrative officer may extend the permit for good cause for an additional 12 months, provided the request is made prior to the expiration date," end quote. This sentence was interpreted in complete isolations from the sentence immediately before it, which I quoted earlier. These two sentences are clearly intended to be read together, not in isolation from one another. If not, then what is the purpose of that preceding sentence? And even if this board chooses to determine that good cause is enough of a reason to issue an extension, again, a position not supported by the wording of the regulations, then still there was and is no good cause for extending the permit. The only evidence relevant to this decision was a statement in an email on October 17th, 2023, in which Bob Avanda said to Tyler, quote, "We are talking to excavators now about starting in the spring when the road posting is lifted." This one sentence does not speak to any work, time, and expenditures invested in the project. This one sentence does not demonstrate a good faith intent to presently commence upon the permitted use, and this one sentence does not demonstrate a good cause for extending the permit. The statement from Bob Avanda is non-committal and ambiguous. What does it mean that he's talking to excavators? What is the nature of his conversations with these excavators? Does he need other contractors other than excavators to complete the project? Has he received an estimate from a contractor? Has he committed to working with a contractor? Has the contractor given him a project schedule? To read this sentence as a good faith intent to presently commence upon the permitted use requires significant interpretation and speculation. Let me again be clear that this one sentence from Bob Avanda was the only evidence considered in this decision, as proven through our public records request to Tyler for documents related to his decision. The only responsive document was the October 17th, 2023 email from Bob Avanda. I should also note that the subject line of the October 17th email from Bob Avanda to Tyler was Access Permit 2117, parcel ID HB2427. Nowhere in his email did Bob Avanda make any reference to zoning permit 2021-83. Richmond zoning regulations section 5.3.2b requires a permit extension request to be made prior to the expiration date. The permittee failed to request an extension of zoning permit 2021-83 as required, and as such, there was no basis for issuing an extension. So across two select board meetings in late 2021, and after public comments and discussion around numerous concerns related to and evidence of piecemeal development, the select board put two conditions on their approval of associated access permit 2117. And these conditions are referenced in zoning permit 2021-83. One, for access to one primary and one accessory structure only, applicant must reapply before this access may be used to serve additional structures. And two, landowner must close any pre-existing access. According to a memo on or about January 31st, 2023 from Tyler, even though there is another access point on the property, Hillview Heights is in compliance with these conditions, so long as the second access is closed by the time construction on the primary access is complete or the permit is expired. The applicant's failure to invest any work, time, or expenditures into the project is not merely a technicality. The applicant's failure to complete the work of upgrading the driveway and access road has enabled the landowner to evade the select board's conditions to close any pre-existing access for the last 2+ years. And the permit extension enables the landowner to evade this condition for another year. We ask you to reverse the one-time 12-month extension of zoning permit 2021-83 and determine that the expiration date for the permit was November 2nd, 2023. As we have demonstrated, there is no evidence of any work, time, or expenditures invested in the project. There is no good faith intent presently commenced upon permitted use. There is no good cause for extending this permit. And the landowner never even requested to extend zoning permit 2021-83 as required in order to receive an extension. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Tyler, why don't you explain your side, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I should swear you in too. You
Absolutely.
swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Right.
So, it is important to kind of, frame what is that we're really looking at tonight. And it's a very narrow thing. We're not looking to relitigate, the issuance of permit 2120-83. What we're really looking at is, was I allowed per the letter of the law, per how it's written in the zoning regulations to make the decision the way I did. And I do think there's an important distinction to be made between something that's objectively stated and people's subjective interpretations of the regulation. So if you reread 5.3.2 subsection B, a zoning permit shall expire 24 months after the effective date, provided, however, that a zoning permit shall not expire if the administrative officer determines that viewed as a whole, the work, time, and expenditures invested in a project for which a zoning permit was issued demonstrates a good faith intent to presently commence upon the permitted use. So there's two things going on here. This first section is dealing with a permit that has expired and the applicants have not applied for an extension, which sometimes happens. What this allows me to do in this particular case is, let's say Matt's building his home. He doesn't apply for an extension. The permit runs its course and the permit has expired. If I go up to Matt's house on, let's say, the day after the permit's expired and I see clear evidence of work going on, which is that the taken as a whole, the work, time, and expenditures invested in the project was issued demonstrates a good faith intent. That's what I would be looking for. I go up there. Are there contractors actively working on the house? Is there clear signs of construction? And if I go up there the day after the permit expires or a week or whenever I decide to go up there and there's clearly still work going on, I would have the option. I wouldn't be required to. I'd have the option to view that as a good faith intent to complete the work and could allow the work continue despite the fact that the permit has expired. Now, if I go up there a week after that permit expires and it doesn't look like there's any work going on, there's no contractors going on, it doesn't appear to be active construction, then I would determine, or I would have the ability to determine that that permit has expired and that the applicant will need to come in and resubmit for an application. What's key to note there is that's a judgment call, right? Good faith intent. There's no requirement that the applicant has to provide any documentation. It's clearly at my interpretation of those regulations. Now, clearly, different people, probably Mr. Holt would view that section differently, would require a lot more evidence from an applicant before you would issue an extension, as would be his right if he was the zoning administrator. But in this particular instance, I'm the zoning administrator. So, and really what matters is what would I, or whoever would sit in here, and again, we could have 3 different people in here. You could have 3 different ways to how they would view that particular situation. But the point is, it's subjective. There isn't an objective measure or criteria that I'm supposed to follow that requires me or an applicant to submit any documentation outside of what I feel is appropriate. Which brings us to the second part of this question is the administrative officer may extend the permit for good cause for an additional 12 months, provided the request is made prior to the expiration date. So if you'll notice there, it says good cause. That's not defined. You won't find that defined anywhere in the regulations. And the only other burden on me for this issuing that extension is that the extension is made prior to the permit expiring.
The request.
The request is made prior to the permit expiring. That's it. As a general rule, I do not get a lot of requests for permit extensions. Most of the ones I do, I issue. I can't think of a reason. I would be very hard pressed to find a reason why I wouldn't issue it. It's a pretty routine thing. I've had people, trying to think of one that comes to mind. What was it? It was one up, Chuck Farr's properties up on Face Corners, the new subdivision there. One of the applicants in that case automatically requested to have the permit extended for an option year, which I was happy to do. So given that the application, the request by Bob was made on, let's see here, 10/17/2023. And now he does note in the email, he does note the access permit. However, the access permit itself isn't, you can't do anything with that. It's the zoning permit that's attached to the access permit, which actually matters. And that's how I interpreted that. He made it prior to the permit expiring. So therefore, the first section where it notes that shall expire after 24 months doesn't apply because he applied for it prior to it expiring. And it says for good cause, he gave me a cause. So the road, he's trying to find an excavator and the road's going to be, he wants to wait till spring till the roads are posted and it's, road postings are listed. So that's what I used as the basis. He made the request when he was supposed to inside of the time period. He gave me a reason. I thought that was good cause and I issued the extension. And that's all that's really required of me as a zoning administrator to do that. And it is subjective and clearly different people would interpret that differently, would require a lot more from an applicant, but that's how I interpreted that section of the regulation.
Let me ask you this, Tyler. If it had expired, he could just as easily reapply, correct?
He could just as easily reapply and expiration wouldn't result in the closure of that access because the closure of the access is contingent on the work on the access being completed. The only way you can work on the access is with a zoning permit. So the only way that that condition would ever be executed is if Bob completes the road as he pulls a permit for, and then as a condition of that approval would have to then close the second access once he has done construction. However, if that permit is never acted on or is never completed, then the access permit hasn't been, then you wouldn't have to, in that case, close that access until the work was complete. Because if you read the conditions of approval, it says for an access, landowner must close any pre-existing access. There's no timeline on that. It doesn't say prior to construction. It doesn't say by a certain date. It just says quite simply as a condition that it must close the access. And I have no authority actually to enforce conditions on just access permits. What I did is I took the conditions on an access permit and added it to the zoning regulations, or I didn't, Keith actually did back in, what was this issue, 11/21. There was no CO required for it either. So this would basically only be a zoning violation as if the zoning administrator determined that Bob had completed the work and that the access was still open. But until the work is complete, the access doesn't have to be closed.
Who enforces access permits?
Select board would in that particular instance, but I actually do not unclear as to who would actually enforce that condition. What I typically would do with most access permits is if like much similar to your decisions, if the DRB puts conditions on a permit, I make that a condition of approval. So basically I would take that and add it into the zoning regulations is how that would typically work.
So the difference really between getting an extension at the last minute, having something in this situation,
Mhm.
really it was a matter of saving the fees of reapplying.
That's essentially what it would be. I mean, he could just as easily, if it expires, pulls another permit tomorrow to do the same thing. And then I would be obligated to put those conditions on the permit, which would be
On
to
the
close it,
permit.
yeah. And if I wanted to put a date on it, then I could. I could say, okay, and I typically will do that sometimes. For example, Mr. Gabriel Furman here with Big Spruce, they had a condition that the judge put on him that he had to have plantings in as soon as possible, but no later than spring of 2023, which doesn't give me a date. So when I issued the permit to Gabe, I took that and added a date onto it that was fit within that timeline, just so it was a little cleaner. But that's really, again, at whoever is issuing the permit's discretion to, they could just go with this. Or if they want to put, so by X date, build on this, that they want to have a permit closed, they could do that. But again, these are pretty routine in terms of, they're not common, but these are generally, you ask for it, you get it. I would be really hard pressed to think of a reason why I wouldn't give one to somebody. Unless it was very clearly outside of the permit had just clearly expired, which is the only hard condition on here in terms of when you can't issue an extension.
Patrick, any questions?
No.
You have any rebuttal?
So I want to comment that, I think if you look at Tyler's memo, from January 31st, he said that so long as the second access is closed by the time construction on the primary access is complete, or the permit is expired, then Hillview Heights will remain in compliance. That's H if you want to, don't mind pulling that one up.
Right. And I think my response to that would be is because they've applied for that extension, that permit hasn't expired, so they don't have to close that access.
Which is the motivation behind our appeal.
Which I understand that, and again,
But
but
there is no time for it expenditures. There seems to be no good faith effort.
that's again, we're arguing something subjective. You're not going to find an objective set of criteria.
I would
that
just
they
like
have
to clarify that you had just said that it didn't matter whether it expired. You literally just said a moment ago that if they didn't complete the work, there would be no situation in which the conditions would be triggered.
Unless
but
they
your-
complete the praxis work on the
But
permit.
your
that's correct.
own memo says, or the permit
Yeah.
expires.
If you
So
go down to page 2, I think it's at the very end of page 2.
Right, and I guess I'll chalk that up to drafting and poor word choice on my part, but the fact remains is that the permit hasn't expired because I issued the extension, so that's really moot. And if that were the case and I hadn't issued the permit, we might have something there because I did issue, that would technically kind of count as a decision. So we might have something there, but that's more of an academic conversation at this point, since they applied for it prior to expiring. So therefore, the first part doesn't apply because the permit hasn't expired. We would only be looking at the second part, which gives me the authority to extend the permit for good cause. Again, you're going to disagree that you don't think that Bob's email that he sent me amounts to good cause, and that's fine,
Yeah, we
but
don't,
it's a subjective interpretation of that.
Yeah, we
There
don't
isn't
even-
an objective measure.
we don't need to debate that. Well, we've shared our perspective on that part. And I would say that the hypothetical of them reapplying is, I would add to that hypothetical that it would be quite odd for them to apply for this permit again. Given that this permit is
That's-
for,
that's
well,
completely-
you brought up hypothetical.
Completely a guess on your part.
No,
so.
no, can I place my thought? Because it's what I'm making a very specific point in that this permit is for one primary access, for one primary structure. It's for a single residence property. So they've just gotten a subdivision approved for that same property. It would be quite odd to go back to Tyler and say, well, we want to. I'm saying if you're going to go down the road of the hypothetical, you have to play out the entire hypothetical, is my point, because there is a approval by this board for a subdivision on that same property. Why do they need a driveway for a single family residence at the same time as building a subdivision? Right. So I only bring that up because you brought up that hypothetical. And I think ultimately, you've heard from Tyler in terms of his interpretation of the regulations. And I think that's ultimately what I'm asking the board to look at, is to take a look at the regulations and come up with your interpretation of what. You've heard how we read it. You've heard how Tyler reads it. We can debate that back and forth. I don't think there's much point in that. Right. So, but I read these regulations and it seems pretty clear that whichever test you choose to apply, I could see multiple test, there's one that I think is pretty clear. But even if you choose to apply the most loose test in here, they have not demonstrated good cause for a permit extension. So I think you've heard our argument on that. So I don't know if there's anything on that, but
I would just comment, if I may, Mr. Chair, just on the point here is that the responsibilities of kind of the DRB in this particular instance, and that's section 8.2.2. Number F notes to hear and decide appeals for that's a variance, excuse me. But essentially the role of us is to interpret the regulations literally as we can. Now, if there was an objective set of criteria that says in order to me to issue an extension, the applicant has to provide evidence to that effect or particular type of documentation, I would hold them to that. But what we're arguing here essentially is, again, something that's subjective. There isn't an objective violation or failure to comply with the section of the regulations as written. I followed it to the letter, whereas I had a cause, which was here. I determined that cause to be good. I issued the extension. The extension came in at the appropriate timeline.
Okay. I saw Roger up there. Roger, do you have any comments? Questions? Still awake?
Probably not.
Okay. We want to go in deliberative session and discuss this? Or does someone have a motion?
I think I'd move.
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Now we can, Roger.
Now
Oh,
I
I'm
can-
sorry. I had you on mute and I didn't know it. All right, so here's my question, Tyler. The permit was issued to do some work. And if I'm understanding you correctly, some work was done. Is that correct?
No, there hasn't been really much of any work being done, but the applicant,
I clarify, there's been literally no work on the project as far as anyone can tell, or all evidence points to zero work on the project. So, but make that very clear. Yeah.
okay, that's one interpretation of it. But again, I think you could talk about we're doing work behind the scenes with we're shutting shovel in the ground, lining contractors up. I would count that as work. But again,
Okay,
subjective.
that's my question. So there was effort made by the contractor or by the applicant to do some work.
At least to attempt to find contractors, which again, I would count, especially given the tight labor market and the difficulty
Okay.
people are having of finding construction workers. I find it perfectly logical to see that as a reason why to delay construction, because you can't find anybody to do the work.
Okay, got it.
And are the road, and there is a time, isn't there, where construction vehicles aren't allowed on our roads, or is that only in the
That it's a
spring?
certain weight limits, especially too with like you're being a dirt road up there, and I'm not an expert as to what those limits are. Pete Goslin, the road foreman, would probably
Usually
be a
just a few
better
weeks.
reference of that.
Spring, okay.
Yes, but I imagine like during mud season, and also though, I'm sure they don't want to try and go up there and work on it when it's
Right.
frozen solid either.
If I may highlight that this is all speculation. There's this one sentence from Bob. That's all we know. That's the only evidence we know of any.
And I would say that's the only evidence that you have that he hasn't done any work either.
But it's your
Okay.
job to look at the evidence.
Okay, we,
I would also like to add that they've had 2 years as well.
Yeah.
That's all. So they've had 2 years. And now is the time that they will be doing work in the future. According to,
Roger, anything else from you?
No, I've got it. Thanks.
Thank you. Want to go deliberative session?
Yes.
You make that motion?
I move that we move this to deliberative session.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.